We're here today to let you know about the book that we've been waiting for so long has finally arrived, the Glen Bogue story. That's the life story of the founding missionary to the United Pentecostal Church of Australia, Brother Glen Bogue, who came from Indiana to Australia to bring the message of the oneness of God and baptism in Jesus' name. So we're here today to talk about this book and find out how we got it and how it came to be. And so, Brother Downs, how did the UPCI come to get this book?
I think it's a very, very long story, probably going back about 30 years. There was a minister in Australia, Brother Gary Bedell, and he was in Belmore in the early days, and he always had a burden on his heart to gather together the history of the Australian church, and particularly the work that Brother Bogue did. So he gathered this information, but in time he eventually went to the United States, travelled throughout the United States interviewing people quite extensively, and gathered the information into a manuscript. Unfortunately, he passed away, and the manuscript was left with his family, and then as the years passed, we expressed interest in purchasing that manuscript, mainly because the family had gone to a lot of expense in travelling to gather the information. So the United Pentecostal Church purchased the book, and we're really, really happy about this. There's a lot of information, a lot of exciting information that tells us how the work started in Australia.
And so when we received this manuscript, then it was passed on to a team of editors to work on it. And
very capable editors.
Yeah, you led that team, Sister Carla.
Well, I was part of that team, and I think a couple of others were added, but it was all wonderful to have a variety of editors because everyone had a strong contribution to make this book readable.
Because it's a wonderful story, but it's one thing to have a good story, it's another to make it readable, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And the information in this book, I've read much of the book. I haven't read finished it yet, but there's some fantastic information and detail in there, not just about the early church in Australia, but about Brother Bogue's life and how he came to be in the church and the things that happened to him.
Yes. Well, actually, the first 5 chapters are about his life in Indiana and how he grew up, and then he fulfilled the call of God that he received when he was 13 years of age. And by the time he's ready to come to Australia, he has got a wonderfully successful church in Gary, Indiana, which he has built up and built as well. And as he says to his wife, we've got a feathered nest and 5 children and we don't need anything. I don't want to go anywhere else. And then, of course, he had not much after that. He had the vision of the word Australia on the back of the church during a revival meeting with the Mangans. And he was stunned by this. He couldn't even go to the altar and pray for people that night. And so not long after that, at first he tried to palm off this vision to other people, like somebody needs to go to Australia, somebody needs to. And he did find a young man at one stage, but this young man sort of petered off after a while, and Brother Bogue asked him, he says, well, what about you going to Australia? He says, well, I've just become engaged to a young woman called Faith, and she doesn't want to go, and I don't want to go without faith.
What part of the book did you find particularly interesting?
Well, I think so far there's been a lot of interest expressed in the book. When we read portions of it in the conference in 2019, a number of people said, we want more of this, so that really spurred us on further. I think that when you read the book, it is terribly inspirational how this man stepped out. And then after many years, I eventually had the privilege of meeting him in 1982 when he came to Australia to speak at our conference in the Deakin High School hall here in Canberra. And we had several talks because at that time I was the Home Mission Director, and he was quite interested in knowing about how the Australian church was going. But I think in the prologue of the book, I've expressed some of the things that were said in that meeting, the obvious love that they had for the people in Australia, both Brother Bogue and Sister Bogue, and absolutely oozed out of them while they were speaking to the people in that conference.
And Sister Carlo, you expressed that this book is warts and all. It talks about all the joys, but also all the challenges as well. How did you find that inspirational?
Oh, absolutely. And I really believe that this is the book that connects us to our past, to our heritage, and our Pentecostal heritage. And so it was inspirational at many levels. Not only that this man had a call and that he followed it, also that his wife was very strong in hearing from the Lord as well, that she wasn't just going to let her husband feel the call, as it were, but she had to find out that God was really leading them to Australia, because she had 5 children to look after and they were important. But it was inspirational at the level that as a minister, how much he cared for the other ministers and how much he tried to teach them. And so there are beautiful gems in there about teaching people. There are beautiful gems, and I think Brother Downs may talk about that, about the way that he preached and taught. So, and of course their lives, their ordinary lives, and how they lived them joyously. They enjoyed their ministry.
Challenges didn't change their desire or their joy, as it were.
Yeah.
Brother Downs, you mentioned, or Sister Carla rather, mentioned that he had a unique way of preaching.
Yes, I even remember this from his visit to the conference. But if we read the book, first of all, I'll say, pastors, this book will fire you up. And when I was reading it, some of the illustrations that are recorded, just down-to-earth illustrations that Brother Bogue would give during his preaching, it just thrilled me and really touched my heart, because he just had a way of reaching into people's hearts. If I was to sum this book up, I would say it's very interesting, it's inspirational, it's a lasting record of how the church started in Australia, and it really highlights what a man and a woman can do if they answer the call of God and step out, even across the oceans, to a country they had no clue about. And in fact, to start off with, they received rejections. There was a man who said, there's no way you're going to come to Australia. We don't want any more Pentecostals in Australia. And then even the Foreign Missions Division in the USA rejected him to begin with. But he said, no, God has spoken to me, and he pushed, and eventually people recognised his calling.